They said my land was perfect for a shortcut, so I turned it into a dead end. And the wildest part is I didn't raise my voice once. I live just outside a little town called Brook Hollow, a place that used to have more tractors than traffic lights. 15 years ago, I bought 5 acres there, nothing fancy, just a long rectangular stretch wedged between Millstone Road on one side and Alder Creek Drive on the other. Back then, both roads were as quiet as a Sunday morning. Millstone was 2 lanes wide and patient. Alder Creek. Not even fully paved yet, just gravel with a dream. I didn't buy the land as some investment strategy or grand development plan. I bought it because it felt like breathing room. After my divorce, I needed space that didn't echo with the noise of city life. I built a modest 1-story house set back from the road. A wide porch with a creaky swing, the kind of place where you can hear the crickets thinking. I planted some grass, a few maples, and ran a split-rail fence along the front, mostly for looks. The back half open, just a field rolling gently downhill, catching the evening sun. For years, nothing happened. And honestly, that was perfect. But then Brook Hollow started growing. A tech distribution company set up shop off Millstone, and Alder Creek got widened, feeding into a brand new subdivision called Copper Ridge. Young families, shiny SUVs, Amazon vans showing up like clockwork. Traffic thickened the way soup thickens when you forget it on the stove. I noticed it in pieces. One evening in late September. I was sitting on my porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sun drop behind the trees when I saw headlights moving across my field. And I mean across my field, where headlights had no business moving. At first, I thought maybe someone had lost control, maybe a teenager messing around. But the car didn't skid or swerve, it moved clean and straight, cutting diagonally across my grass from Millstone to Alder Creek, then popped back onto the pavement like it had done it 100 times. Then another set of headlights followed the same path, and another. No hesitation, no confusion, just confidence. I stood up slowly, like if I moved too fast, I'd spook whatever this was. I walked down the porch steps, boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. By the time I reached the middle of the yard, a sedan zoomed past about 40 yards in front of me. The driver didn't even look over. That's when I saw it clearly. Tire tracks, deep, distinct lines, not random, not fresh and alone. A defined strip of flattened grass about 10 feet wide, running from one road to the other in a near-perfect line. Someone had connected the dots. The next morning, I decided to test a theory. I poured coffee, grabbed a folding chair, and parked myself by the window facing the field. Between 7:10 and 8:10 a.m., 27 vehicles cut across my property. I counted them out loud like I was tallying cattle sedans, pickup trucks, a delivery van with a smiling arrow on the side. Not one slowed down, not one waved. They drove like my land already belonged to the public. It's a strange feeling watching strangers treat your property like it's negative space. I drove over to the office park that afternoon. It was all shiny glass and carefully landscaped shrubs. I found the security guard posted near the entrance, a guy in his 50s named Carl, who looked like he'd rather be fishing. I said, "Hey, you aware people are cutting across private land behind here?" He squinted at me. "You mean that field shortcut," he said. "It's not a shortcut," I replied. "It's my yard." Carl shrugged. "Everybody uses it. Saves 10 minutes when Millstone backs up." "Everybody except me," I said. He gave me that look, one of those, "You're technically right, but you're socially inconvenient" kind of looks. That evening, I pulled my property survey from the filing cabinet, spread it across the kitchen table. The boundaries were exactly where they'd always been. No easements, no shared access agreements, no carve-outs. Just 5 acres of mine. I didn't block it right away. Part of me wanted to believe it was temporary, like a rumor that would burn out. But instead it escalated. Within a week, the grass was mostly gone along that path. The ground was packed down hard and dusty. Rideshare drivers started using it. I saw a school bus try it once. It inched halfway across before the driver realized this wasn't in the route manual and awkwardly backed out. Kids' faces pressed to the windows like they were on safari. Then came the trash. A crumpled fast food bag, a soda cup rolling in the wind, cigarette butts. But near the midpoint, it looked like someone had decided my land was their smoke break lounge. That hit something deeper than just inconvenience. It wasn't about time savings anymore. It was about assumption. About the idea that if enough people do something for long enough, it starts to feel like a right. I stood out there one afternoon looking at that dusty scar across my field, and I felt this mix of anger and something else. Something steadier. Resolve, maybe. Not the loud kind, the patient kind. I could have put up a fence, 8-foot privacy panels, razor wire, make a point. But that would have turned it into a war. I didn't want a war. I wanted clarity. So instead of reacting fast, I started making calls. And that's when things started to get interesting. The first call I made wasn't to a lawyer or the county. It was to a landscaper named Miguel Herrera, a guy who'd done some grading work for me years ago. Miguel was the kind of guy who measured twice cut once and didn't talk much unless there was something worth saying. I told him what was happening. He drove out that afternoon, parked by the porch, and we walked the path together. By then, the grass was completely gone, replaced by compacted dirt with 2 clear tire grooves like rails. Miguel crouched, pressed his palm into the soil, then stood looking from one road to the other. "They've driven this enough," he said. "It's basically a road now." "It's not a road," I replied. He nodded slowly. "No, it's not." I asked him a simple question. "If I wanted to make it impossible to drive through here without building a fence, what would you do?" Miguel didn't answer right away. He scanned the slight slope of the land the way rainwater already drifted toward Alder Creek during storms. "You've got runoff issues with all this traffic," he said. "We could cut a drainage swale across this line. Not deep enough to be dangerous, just enough that no cars can clear it without a ramp." I liked it immediately. Before we committed, I called a soil engineer from Cedar Falls, Denise Holbrook. She specialized in stormwater management. After surveying the property, she said, "Honestly, you probably should have had something like this installed years ago. With traffic packing this down, runoff's only going to get worse." "Traffic," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Yeah, that's part of the issue," she said. Denise designed a shallow channel that ran exactly along the line the cars had carved into my land, 18 inches deep at its lowest point, wide enough to require intention. I had the drainage built just as she described, and by the end of the week it was done. When the first car hit it around 5:40 p.m., I was sitting on the porch. A silver crossover turned off Millstone and accelerated across the field just like before. But halfway through, the brake lights flared red. The car dipped into the swale, stopped dead in its tracks. The driver sat there a moment, probably calculating. Then the car reversed awkwardly, tires kicking up dust, and retreated back to the main road. I didn't smile, but something settled in my chest. The next morning was better. Confusion spread faster than traffic ever had. Cars slowed when they saw the posts. A white delivery van rolled up, paused, idled for 30 seconds before turning around like it had just discovered gravity. By the end of the day, cars were lining back onto Millstone where they belonged. By the end of the week, the mood shifted from confusion to anger. I know because Copper Ridge has a community Facebook page. I'm not a member, but my neighbor across Alder Creek, Mrs. Donnelly, is. She called me one evening laughing. "You're trending," she said. "Excuse me. People are furious about the ditch. They're calling you the porch troll." I blinked. "The what?" "Yeah. Some guy in town thinks he owns the place and dug a trench to punish commuters." Punish commuters. That stuck with me. 2 days later, I got a call from the city's infrastructure office. "Mr. Walker, this is Nathan Price with Municipal Planning. We've received several complaints about a drainage installation on your property that's blocking an informal access route between Millstone and Alder Creek." "Who authorized it?" I asked. "Well, no one formally authorized it," he replied. "It developed naturally." "So did the drainage issue," I said. And I addressed it naturally. 3 days later, Trent Calloway, the office park manager, showed up at my door. He didn't look polished anymore. He looked tired. "We'll accept your terms," he said before sitting down. Just like that. He told me traffic data wasn't in their favor. Employees were complaining. So were residents. The city made it clear they weren't stepping in. I didn't react outwardly, but something unclenched inside me. We signed the deal. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step forward. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. People began respecting the hours. The diagonal scar across my field started to fade, except for the controlled crossing where the cars had no choice but to slow down. Nature started creeping back over the old tire grooves like it was reclaiming something it never should have lost. Sometimes in the evenings I walk along the swale and think about how small the original act seemed. A few cars cutting across open land, harmless, right, efficient even. But here's the thing about shortcuts. They almost always belong to someone. Convenience has a cost, and if that cost isn't paid up front, it gets extracted somewhere else. Usually quietly, usually from the person who didn't volunteer. So I'll leave you with this. If that had been your land, what would you have done? Would you have fenced it off completely, sold the easement without conditions? Or would you have done exactly what I did, turned a convenience into a conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you land on this, because communities are complicated and so is ownership. If you appreciate real stories about everyday conflicts that turn into something bigger than expected, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Sometimes the most interesting battles aren't fought in courtrooms or headlines. They're fought quietly right across your own front yard.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.